Sometimes the most legendary stories begin with tragedy. For our mysterious bounty hunter, that beginning came on the distant planet of Akvatina. Born before the rise of the Empire, he was just a child when chaos erupted in his village. Separatist battle droids attacked without warning during the Clone Wars, leaving destruction in their wake. In those terrifying moments, his parents made their final act, one of love and sacrifice, hiding their son beneath a storage hatch before an explosion claimed their lives. As the smoke cleared, a B-2 series super battle droid discovered the frightened boy. It raised its weapon, ready to fire, but fate intervened. The droid exploded in a shower of sparks, destroyed by a warrior in distinctive armor. Above the boy stood a Mandalorian from the Death Watch movement, hand extended through the smoke and flames. More warriors joined the battle, eliminating the remaining droids while the first rescuer flew away with the child using his jetpack, saving him from a world reduced to ash. Taken in as a foundling, the boy was brought to Concordia, where the Mandalorians trained him in their fighting corps. They taught him not just to survive, but to thrive as a warrior. The trauma of watching droids slaughter his village left deep scars, creating a distrust of mechanical beings that would follow him into adulthood. But in his rescuers, he found a new family and purpose. What the young boy didn't realize was that his new guardians, the Children of the Watch, followed a particularly orthodox interpretation of Mandalorian culture. This religious sect had broken away from mainstream Mandalorian society, adhering to ancient traditions with unwavering dedication. Growing up within this group, he believed their ways represented all Mandalorians. One tradition stood paramount. Once a warrior received their helmet, they could never remove it in the presence of others. To do so meant exile, a permanent separation from their identity as a Mandalorian. Years passed, and tragedy struck the Mandalorian people again. The Great Purge of Mandalore saw the systematic destruction of their culture and the deaths of countless warriors. The Empire's assault scattered the survivors across the galaxy, forcing them into hiding. Our foundling, now a skilled fighter, joined a covert group known simply as the Tribe on the planet Navarro. There, he acquired his distinctive Beskar armor and continued to honor the strict code he had been raised to follow. With his face permanently hidden behind his helmet and his past concealed beneath layers of silence, he emerged into a post-Empire galaxy as a formidable bounty hunter. Most knew him simply as Mando. His pre-Imperial era ship, the Razor Crest, became his home, carrying him across the Outer Rim territories as he collected bounties for the Bounty Hunters Guild. His reputation grew quickly. Guild members and targets alike whispered about the expensive yet ruthlessly efficient hunter in Mandalorian armor. By 9 ABY, Mando had become one of the Guild's most reliable assets, developing a working relationship with Greef Karga, the Guildmaster on Navarro. Karga recognized his value, often reserving the most lucrative and challenging bounties for him. But Mando's path hadn't always been so straightforward. Earlier in his career, he'd worked alongside criminal operator Ranzar Malk and the Twi'lek mercenary siblings Xi'an and Chin. Those partnerships had soured dramatically, with Mando's actions directly leading to Chin's capture and a bitter falling out with the entire group. Despite his reputation for cold efficiency, Mando wasn't motivated by greed or bloodlust. He saw credits merely as a means of survival, a way to maintain his ship and his armor. Characteristically quiet and reserved, he preferred to let his actions speak for him. His personality presented a fascinating contradiction. With criminals and targets, he showed ruthless determination, but when faced with innocents in danger, a different side emerged. This capacity for compassion, however carefully hidden, would eventually pull him toward decisions that would change his life forever. Few outside the covert knew anything about the man behind the helmet. Those who crossed his path never learned about the frightened child rescued from a burning village, or the foundling raised in the strict traditions of a hidden sect. They never discovered his training in the fighting corps or witnessed his commitment to the Mandalorian creed. His past remained as securely guarded as his face beneath the Beskar. Mando moved through the galaxy like a shadow, tracking targets across dusty outposts and crowded spaceports. He captured fugitives with methodical precision, collecting bounties and building his reputation one successful mission at a time. The man who had once been a helpless child now represented something fearsome to those who found themselves on the wrong end of his tracking fob. Little did he know that a simple bounty, the capture of an asset for a mysterious client with Imperial connections, would soon challenge everything he believed about himself and the code he had followed since childhood. The galaxy had more in store for Mando than endless cycles of hunting and collecting. A new chapter waited just beyond the horizon, one that would transform the solitary bounty hunter into something he never expected to become. In the year 9 after the Battle of Yavin, Mando's reputation as a bounty hunter was at its peak. Fresh from capturing a blue-skinned Mythrol criminal, he returned to Navarro seeking his next job. What seemed like a routine meeting would alter the course of his life forever. Grief Karga, the local guildmaster, directed Mando to a mysterious client with Imperial connections. Inside a secluded compound, guarded by weathered stormtroopers, Mando came face to face with a nameless figure simply called the Client. Flanked by a nervous scientist named Dr. Penn Pershing, the Client made an offer too tempting to refuse: a substantial reward of Beskar, the sacred Mandalorian metal that had become incredibly rare following the Great Purge. The mission details were unusually sparse. Mando received a tracking fob with minimal information about his target. The asset was 50 years old and located on a remote desert planet called Arvala 7. For a hunter accustomed to detailed briefings, the lack of information should have raised concerns, but the promise of Beskar overwhelmed any hesitation. A down payment of a single Beskar ingot sealed the agreement. Landing on the harsh landscape of Arvala 7, Mando immediately faced the planet's dangers. Massive creatures called blurgs attacked without warning, nearly overwhelming him until an Ugnaught vapor farmer named Kuil intervened. The diminutive alien saved Mando's life and offered him shelter at his moisture farm. Kuil revealed that many hunters had already tried to capture the asset and failed. When Mando asked for guidance to the target's location, Kuil agreed to help, hoping that a successful mission would rid his valley of the mercenaries disrupting the peace. But there was a catch. Reaching the compound required riding a blurg, something Mando had never done before. After numerous failed attempts to tame the creature, Kuil offered words that would resonate beyond this moment. He reminded Mando that his Mandalorian ancestors once rode the mighty mythosaur. If they could master those legendary beasts, surely he could handle a simple blurg. With renewed determination, Mando succeeded, and the unlikely pair set off across the barren landscape. Upon reaching the mercenary encampment, Kuiil departed, leaving Mando to formulate his approach. As he surveyed the heavily guarded compound through his rifle scope, he spotted something unexpected. An IG-series assassin droid from the Bounty Hunters Guild was already attacking the guards. Despite his ingrained distrust of droids, Mando recognized an opportunity. He joined the fray, and after a tense standoff with the droid, designated IG-11, they formed an uneasy alliance. Together, they fought through waves of Nikto mercenaries, eventually breaching the compound where the asset was hidden. What they discovered inside changed everything. The asset was not a hardened criminal or valuable object, but a child. Though 50 years old according to the tracking fob, the infant appeared barely a year old, with green skin, large ears, and wide, curious eyes. Most surprisingly, it belonged to the same rare species as the legendary Jedi Master Yoda. IG-11, following its programming, prepared to terminate the child. In that crucial moment, something shifted inside Mando. Without hesitation, he shot the droid in the head, saving the child's life. This split-second decision, driven by an instinct he couldn't yet understand, marked the beginning of his transformation from detached hunter to protective guardian. With the child secured in a hovering pram, Mando headed back to his ship only to discover more trouble. A trio of Trandoshan bounty hunters ambushed them, but Mando dispatched them quickly. The presence of tracking fobs identical to his own confirmed his suspicion. The guild had issued multiple bounties for the child. Returning to his ship, Mando found the Razor Crest stripped of crucial parts. A group of Jawas had scavenged his vessel while he was away. Enraged, he chased their massive sandcrawler and attempted to climb aboard, only to be stunned by their ion blasters and knocked to the ground. With no other options, Mando returned to Kuiil, who suggested negotiating with the Jawas rather than fighting them. The scavengers demanded an unusual payment: the egg of a mudhorn, a fierce horned beast that lived in a nearby cave. The ensuing battle pushed Mando to his limits. The mudhorn was enormously powerful, tossing him around like a rag doll and damaging his armor. As the creature charged for a fatal blow, something extraordinary happened. The child, who had followed despite Mando's instructions to stay behind, raised its tiny hand. Suddenly, the massive mudhorn floated helplessly in the air, suspended by an invisible force. This momentary intervention gave Mando the chance to deliver a killing blow with his vibroblade. The exhausted hunter watched in astonishment as the child collapsed from the effort. Though Mando couldn't understand what he had witnessed, viewers familiar with Star Wars recognized it immediately. The child had used the Force, the mysterious energy field wielded by Jedi and Sith alike. With the egg retrieved and traded to the Jawas, Mando and Kuiil repaired the Razor Crest. Before departing, Mando offered Kuiil a position on his crew as thanks for his invaluable help. The Ugnaught declined, stating that he had worked a lifetime to be free of servitude. With the ship repaired and the child secured, Mando set course back to Navarro. Upon his return, Mando delivered the child to the client, who immediately ordered Dr. Pershing to take the infant away for examination. As promised, Mando received a kamtono full of Beskar ingots. The bounty was complete, the contract fulfilled. By all professional standards, this should have been a moment of satisfaction. Instead, Mando found himself troubled by thoughts of what would happen to the child. When he asked about their plans, the client dismissed his concerns, reminding him that the guild code prohibited such questions once a bounty was delivered. Walking away with his reward, Mando was left with a growing sense of unease that would soon drive him to a decision that would make him a fugitive from both the guild and the remnants of the Empire. The stack of Beskar ingots weighed heavily in Mando's hands, but something else weighed even heavier on his mind. As he sat in his ship preparing to leave Navarro, his fingers traced over the metal ball from one of the Razor Crest's control levers, the same ball the child had been fascinated with during their journey. In that moment, something changed inside our bounty hunter. Unable to abandon the innocent child to whatever fate awaited him with the Imperials, Mando made a decision that would forever alter his path. He returned to the Imperial facility, using a grappling hook to reach the roof. From there, he eavesdropped on a conversation between the client and Dr. Pershing, learning they had plans for the child that likely meant harm. Mando breached the facility with explosive precision, systematically taking down stormtroopers as he carved a path toward the child. His arsenal proved devastatingly effective. Whistling birds, flamethrowers, and hand-to-hand combat skills overwhelmed the Imperial forces. When he finally reached the room where the child was being held, he discovered Dr. Pershing standing over the sedated infant. Instead of killing the scientist, Mando spared him when Pershing insisted he had been protecting the child from harm. With the child secured, Mando attempted to escape Navarro, but word of his betrayal had already spread through the Bounty Hunters Guild. In the streets leading to his ship, he found himself surrounded by dozens of bounty hunters led by Greef Karga. A firefight erupted, with Mando desperately trying to reach the Razor Crest while protecting the child. Despite his skills, sheer numbers eventually overwhelmed him. Pinned down and outgunned, Mando shielded the child with his armored body, prepared to make his final stand. Just when all seemed lost, the sky erupted with the sound of jetpacks. Fellow Mandalorians from his covert descended upon the scene, led by the imposing warrior Paz Vizsla. Their timely intervention allowed Mando to reach his ship and escape, though their assistance came at a steep cost. The covert would now need to relocate, their hidden sanctuary on Navarro compromised. As they fled into space, Mando realized the child now had tracking fobs active across the galaxy. They needed a place to hide, somewhere remote and unassuming. He set course for Sorgan, a backwater planet with no starport, no industrial centers, and no significant population density, the perfect place to disappear. On Sorgan, Mando and the child visited a local common house to gather information. There, his keen eye spotted a woman who seemed out of place, former rebel shock trooper Cara Dune. After an initially tense meeting that ended in a draw during hand-to-hand combat, the two warriors developed a mutual respect. Their conversation was interrupted when local krill farmers approached Mando, desperately seeking protection from raiders who terrorized their village. Initially reluctant, Mando agreed to help when he learned the village was remote and offered lodging. He recruited Dune to assist, and they traveled to the peaceful settlement where the child quickly became a favorite among the village children. The widow Omera and her daughter Winter welcomed them warmly, providing insight into a life Mando had never considered possible. Upon investigating the raiders, Mando and Dune discovered a game-changing threat, an ATST walker. This Imperial war machine turned what should have been a simple security job into a potentially devastating conflict. Realizing the villagers couldn't simply evacuate, Mando and Dune decided to train them to fight back, transforming farmers into a defensive militia. Their plan was daring but effective. Mando and Dune infiltrated the raiders' camp at night, intentionally drawing their attention and leading the AT-ST back to the village. Their carefully dug trenches filled with water waited as a trap for the mechanical beast. When the walker finally fell into the pit, Mando destroyed it with explosives, turning the tide of battle and allowing the villagers to rout the remaining Klatooinian raiders. In the peaceful weeks that followed, something unexpected began to take root in Mando's heart. As he watched the child play with the other children, a different future began to form in his mind. Here was stability, safety, community, everything the child deserved but could never have while constantly on the run with a bounty hunter. Omera, who had developed feelings for Mando, encouraged him to stay, even attempting to remove his helmet. For a fleeting moment, he considered abandoning the creed that had defined his entire adult life for a chance at normalcy. But before her fingers could lift the Beskar, Mando stopped her. He belonged to a different path, one that could not include settling down, no matter how tempting. His instinct proved correct when he spotted a bounty hunter lurking at the edge of the forest, tracking fob in hand. Dune eliminated the threat, but the message was clear. Nowhere would be safe for the child as long as the bounty remained active. With a heavy heart, Mando said goodbye to the village, knowing that his presence would only bring more danger to these peaceful people. Their journey continued, but not without complications. After narrowly escaping a space battle with the bounty hunter Ryadmar, the Razor Crest sustained damage that forced Mando to land on Tatooine for repairs. At Docking Bay 3-5 in Mos Eisley Spaceport, he met the spirited mechanic Peli Motto, who, despite Mando's initial coldness, took an immediate liking to the child. Needing credits to pay for repairs, Mando accepted a job assisting rookie bounty hunter Toro Calican. The inexperienced hunter sought to capture the elite assassin Fennec Shand, a dangerous target that could earn him membership in the Bounty Hunters Guild. Despite his reservations about working with an amateur, Mando agreed to help in exchange for all of Calican's credits. The hunt took them deep into the Dune Sea, where they tracked Shand across the vast desert. After narrowly avoiding her expert sniper fire, they captured the assassin, but their speeder bikes were damaged in the process. Mando left to find alternative transport, instructing Calican to watch their prisoner. This absence proved to be a critical mistake. The cunning Shand revealed to Calican that Mando was a traitor to the guild with a valuable bounty on his head. Sensing an opportunity for greater glory than merely capturing an assassin, Calican shot Shand and raced back to Mos Eisley, taking Motto and the child hostage to set a trap for Mando. Returning to find Shand dead and his companions missing, Mando quickly deduced what had happened. At the spaceport, he confronted Calican, who demanded Mando surrender himself. Using his years of experience and quick reflexes, Mando deployed a flash charge to blind Calican momentarily before taking him down with a single precise shot. With the threat eliminated, Mando used the rookie's credits to pay for his ship repairs and departed Tatooine, once again on the run with his young charge. With Imperial forces and the Bounty Hunters Guild both hunting them, Mando and the child needed to stay on the move. Credits were running low, and Mando required work that wouldn't draw attention from his pursuers. desperate times called for desperate measures, leading him to contact an old associate, the criminal Ranzar Malk, who operated from a space station called the Roost. Their reunion was tense from the start. Malk expressed surprise at Mando's return, given his recent troubles with the Guild. When Malk offered a job, Mando learned it wasn't his skills that were needed, but his ship. The Razor Crest, a pre-Imperial era gunship, could approach a New Republic prison transport without triggering automated security systems. Mando reluctantly agreed to join a crew assembled for a prison break mission. The team was a collection of dangerous specialists. Miggs Mayfeld, a former Imperial sharpshooter who would lead the operation. Berg, a hulking Devaronian with immense strength. Zero, a droid pilot and hacker, and most uncomfortably, Xi'an, a Twi'lek knife expert with whom Mando shared a complicated past. Tension between Mando and the crew was immediate and palpable. During the hyperspace journey aboard the Razor Crest, the mercenaries mocked his Mandalorian heritage, questioned why so few Mandalorians remained alive, and attempted to remove his helmet. A physical confrontation with Berg led to the accidental discovery of the child hidden in a compartment on the ship, exposing Mando's secret and adding to his growing unease. Upon reaching the New Republic prison ship, the Bothan 5, Zero executed a dangerous docking maneuver. The team infiltrated the vessel to discover it was staffed not by human guards, but by security droids. Using his exceptional combat skills, Mando cleared a path through the mechanized sentries, earning begrudging respect from his temporary allies. The mission took a darker turn when they encountered a living New Republic soldier named Davan. While Mando attempted to resolve the situation without bloodshed, Xi'an killed the guard in cold blood. Moments later, they reached their target, a cell containing Xi'an's brother Chin, who recognized Mando immediately. Years earlier, Mando had abandoned Chin during a mission, leaving him to be captured. Now, in a shocking betrayal, the crew shoved Mando into the cell, locked the door, and left him behind. What followed demonstrated why Mando had earned his fearsome reputation. Escaping the cell by capturing a security droid and using its arm to access the controls, he systematically hunted down each crew member. Moving through the ship like a phantom, he used the ship's security systems to separate the team before picking them off one by one. Most revealing of Mando's character was not his skill, but his restraint. When he captured Berg, Mayfeld, and Xi'an, he chose not to kill them, instead locking them in a cell, the same mercy they had failed to show him. He then confronted Chin at the ship's exit ramp and brought him back to the Roost as originally contracted. Malk paid Mando for delivering Chin, suspicious about the fate of his other crew members. As Mando departed the station, he revealed a final, clever deception. Before leaving the prison ship, he had taken a tracking beacon from the New Republic soldier's body and placed it on Chin. As the Razor Crest jumped to hyperspace, New Republic X-Wings arrived and opened fire on Malk's station, delivering swift justice while Mando and the child escaped. Their nomadic existence continued until an unexpected communication from Greef Karga changed everything. The Guild agent proposed a risky plan to eliminate the Imperial presence that had taken control of Navarro City following Mando's escape with the child. According to Karga, the client had doubled his bounty on the child and imposed harsh restrictions on the city's residents. Karga's offer was tempting. If Mando would bring the child back to Navarro and use him as bait to draw out the client, they could eliminate the Imperial threat. In return, Mando's name would be cleared with the Guild, allowing him to travel freely again. Though suspicious, Mando saw an opportunity to end the pursuit once and for all. Knowing he needed help for such a dangerous mission, Mando sought out allies he could trust. First, he returned to Sorgan to recruit Cara Dune, who initially refused until learning they would be fighting Imperials. Then they traveled to Arvala 7 to find Kuiil, hoping the wise Ugnaught would help protect the child during their operation. At Kuiil's moisture farm, Mando received a shock. The Ugnaught had salvaged and rebuilt IG-11, the very assassin droid Mando had destroyed when they first found the child. Despite his deep distrust of droids in general, and IG-11 specifically, Mando was forced to accept Kuiil's assurance that the droid had been completely reprogrammed, now serving as a nurse and protector rather than a hunter and killer. With his team assembled, including Kuiil's blurgs for transportation, Mando returned to Navarro. There, they met Karga and his hunters in the volcanic plains outside the city. The plan was to present Mando as a captured prisoner who had been tracked down along with the child, allowing them to get close to the client without raising suspicion. That night, while camping on the lava flats, the group was attacked by winged Reptavian creatures native to Navarro. During the attack, Karga received a poisonous wound that appeared fatal. In an astonishing moment, the child approached the injured man and, using the same mysterious power he had demonstrated against the Mudhorn, healed Karga's wound completely. This act of compassion transformed Karga. The next morning, he killed his fellow hunters and confessed the truth. The meeting with the client had been a setup. The original plan was to kill Mando and take the child. Now, moved by the child's mercy, Karga proposed they work together for real. They crafted a new strategy. Mando would pose as a captured prisoner, with Dune playing the role of the bounty hunter who caught him, while Karga would claim the child remained safely outside the city. Meanwhile, Kuiil would take the child back to the safety of the Razor Crest. As the main group entered Navarro City, they were escorted to the cantina where the client waited, flanked by stormtroopers. Just as it seemed their plan might succeed, everything went catastrophically wrong. A new Imperial officer, Moff Gideon, arrived with a full company of death troopers and stormtroopers. From outside the cantina, his forces opened fire, killing the client and his guards instantly. Mando, Dune, and Karga barely escaped the initial barrage, taking cover as Gideon's troops surrounded the building. Trapped and outgunned, Mando desperately tried to contact Kuiil, only to receive no response. Unknown to him, the Ugnaught had been killed by Imperial scout troopers who had then captured the child. Just when all seemed lost, an unexpected savior emerged. IG-11, now fulfilling his programming as protector, had recovered the child from the scout troopers and was fighting his way toward the besieged cantina. Surrounded by Imperial forces and trapped in the cantina on Navarro, Mando and his allies faced a desperate situation. When Moff Gideon ordered his troops to set up an E-Web heavy repeating blaster, the situation grew even more dire. During an attempt to disable the weapon, Mando was caught in an explosion that left him seriously injured and unable to escape on his own. As death troopers closed in on their position, IG-11 arrived with the child in tow, cutting through Imperial forces with ruthless efficiency. the group retreated into the cantina, where Mando, gravely wounded, instructed them to leave him behind. In his mind, it was better to die as a Mandalorian than to remove his helmet and survive in shame. IG-11, however, offered a solution. The droid pointed out a critical loophole in the Mandalorian creed. Mando could not remove his helmet in front of another living being, but IG-11 was not alive. He was a droid, a machine. Reluctantly, Mando allowed the droid to remove his helmet and treat his injuries with a Bacta spray. For the first time since childhood, his face was exposed, revealing the man beneath the armor that so many feared. With Mando stabilized, the group escaped into the sewers beneath Navarro, hoping to find sanctuary with the Mandalorian covert. What they discovered instead was tragedy. Piles of empty Mandalorian armor lined the tunnels, all that remained of Mando's tribe. Their sacrifice had allowed him to escape with the child, but the cost had been devastating. Not all had perished, however. The armorer, spiritual leader of the tribe, had survived and was collecting the Beskar from the fallen, ensuring their legacy would continue. When Mando offered to help her escape, she refused, insisting her place was there, preserving what remained of their heritage. In a ceremony rich with tradition, the armorer forged a signet for Mando, the emblem of a mudhorn, the creature he and the child had defeated together. She declared them a clan of two, bound by the Mandalorian creed. More significantly, she gave Mando a new mission: to reunite the child with his own kind, a race of sorcerers known as Jedi, enemies of Mandalore in ancient times, but now potential allies for the vulnerable child. The armorer also gifted Mando a jetpack, completing his arsenal of traditional Mandalorian weapons. This moment represented his full acceptance into Mandalorian culture. No longer just a helmeted bounty hunter, but a warrior with a sacred purpose, a guardian for a child of mysterious powers. The group continued their escape through an underground lava river, with IG-11 guiding their boat toward the exit. When they discovered stormtroopers waiting at the tunnel mouth, the droid made the ultimate sacrifice. Understanding that his programming would be reset if captured, allowing him to once again become a hunter that might harm the child, IG-11 chose to self-destruct, eliminating the Imperial forces and clearing the way for the others. For Mando, who had begun his journey despising all droids, this sacrifice marked a profound shift in perspective. IG-11 had proven that even mechanical beings could demonstrate nobility and self-sacrifice, challenging deeply held prejudices born from childhood trauma. With the immediate threat eliminated, Mando faced a final confrontation with Moff Gideon, who attacked in a TIE fighter. Using his new jetpack, Mando launched himself into the air, grappled onto the fighter with his whipcord, and planted explosive charges on the wings. The damaged craft spiraled into the desert, seemingly ending the Imperial threat. Back in Navarro City, now freed from Imperial control, Greef Karga offered Mando a place in the guild once more. He declined, prioritizing his new mission to find the child's people. With the child safely tucked in his ship, Mando departed Navarro, now bound not just by contract or payment, but by the sacred oath of clan and creed to protect his foundling. Months later, seeking information about other Mandalorians who might help him locate Jedi, Mando followed rumors to Tatooine. There, in a remote settlement called Mospelgo, he encountered a man wearing familiar armor, the distinctive helmet and jetpack of a legendary bounty hunter named Boba Fett. The man beneath the armor, however, was not Mandalorian, but the town marshal, Cobb Vanth, who had purchased the salvaged gear from Jawas. Mando demanded the armor be returned, as it belonged to his people, but Vanth proposed a deal instead. If Mando helped eliminate a crate dragon threatening the town, the marshal would relinquish the armor willingly. This massive reptile had terrorized both the settlers and the local Tusken raiders for generations, forcing an uneasy alliance between traditional enemies. Working together, Mando brokered peace between the townspeople and the Tuskens, developing a plan to defeat the monster using explosives planted in its belly. During the battle, Vanth nearly perished, saved only by Mando's quick thinking. Together, they succeeded in killing the beast, and true to his word, Vanth surrendered the Mandalorian armor, which Mando took with him when he departed Mos Pelgo. Unknown to him, his actions were observed from afar by a scarred man watching his departure with great interest. Continuing his search for Mandalorians, Mando transported a frog-like alien and her eggs to the estuary moon of Trask. After a harrowing crash landing that nearly sank his ship, he made contact with a group of sailors who claimed they could lead him to others of his kind. The offer proved to be a trap, with the Quarren attempting to feed Mando to a Mammacore sea creature and steal his valuable Beskar armor. Just as all seemed lost, 3 Mandalorian warriors jet-packed in for a rescue, efficiently dispatching the treacherous Quarren. Their leader introduced herself as Bo-Katan, heir to the throne of Mandalore. What shocked Mando most was not her royal lineage, but her willingness to remove her helmet, along with her companions Koska Reeves and Axe Woves. When Mando protested that no true Mandalorian would remove their helmet, Bo-Katan revealed a truth that shook his understanding of his own culture. He was, in fact, a child of the Watch, a group of religious zealots who had broken away from mainstream Mandalorian society. The tradition of never removing one's helmet was not universal Mandalorian practice, but a specific belief of this orthodox sect. This revelation challenged everything Mando believed about what it meant to be Mandalorian. The foundation of his identity, the creed he had followed since childhood, turned out to be just one interpretation of Mandalorian culture, not its universal core. Despite this cultural shock, Mando agreed to help Bo-Katan and her warriors raid an Imperial Gozanti cruiser carrying weapons. During the mission, he learned of her quest to reclaim the Darksaber, an ancient Mandalorian weapon currently in the possession of Moff Gideon. With it, she hoped to retake Mandalore and restore her people's homeland. The mission succeeded, and in return for his help, Bo-Katan directed Mando to the forest planet Corvus, where he might find a Jedi named Ahsoka Tano who could help with the child. On Corvus, Mando discovered a city under the brutal control of Imperial Magistrate Morgan Elsbeth. Offered a pure Beskar spear to kill the Jedi lurking in the forest, Mando instead sought out Ahsoka Tano directly. Their initial meeting turned into a brief combat, ended only when Mando mentioned he was sent by Bo-Katan. The former Jedi communicated with the child through the Force, revealing for the first time his true name, Grogu. She explained that Grogu had been raised at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, trained by many masters over the years, but had hidden his abilities to survive the Jedi Purge that followed the rise of the Empire. His memory and connection to the Force had been clouded by fear and trauma. Though Mando hoped Ahsoka would train Grogu in the ways of the Jedi, she refused. She sensed the strong attachment between Mando and Grogu, a bond that in Jedi teaching could lead to fear, anger, and the dark side. Instead, she directed them to the ancient ruins on Tython, where Grogu could choose his own path by reaching out through the Force from a seeing stone. If he chose to embrace his abilities, another Jedi might sense his presence and come to train him. Following Ahsoka Tano's guidance, Mando traveled to the ancient planet Tython with Grogu. Their mission was simple, yet profound. Place the child on the Seeing Stone, a powerful Force nexus where he could choose his path and potentially reach out to other Jedi. As Grogu sat in deep meditation, surrounded by a powerful energy field, Mando spotted an approaching ship. It was the infamous Slave One, belonging to none other than Boba Fett. Fett had been tracking Mando since Tatooine, where he'd acquired Mandalorian armor from Cobb Vanth. Now, face to face with Mando, Fett demanded the return of his father's armor. The tense standoff escalated when Fett revealed he had a sniper positioned to target Grogu. That sniper was Fennec Shand, the assassin Mando had encountered on Tatooine, who had apparently survived her injuries thanks to Fett's intervention. Before they could negotiate further, disaster struck. Imperial ships appeared in the sky above Tython, deploying stormtroopers under Moff Gideon's command. In the ensuing chaos, Mando attempted to reach Grogu, but was repeatedly repelled by the force field surrounding the Seeing Stone. He joined forces with Fett and Shand against the common Imperial threat, fighting off waves of stormtroopers. When the force field finally dissipated, Mando made a desperate dash toward Grogu, but it was too late. 4 dark troopers, elite battle droids in imposing black armor, descended from Gideon's cruiser and snatched the exhausted child. As they flew back to their ship, Mando could only watch helplessly. The final blow came seconds later. A precision strike from Gideon's cruiser obliterated the Razor Crest, reducing Mando's home and possessions to smoldering wreckage. All that survived were his Beskar spear from Ahsoka and the small metal ball from the ship's control lever, a toy Grogu had grown fond of. In that moment, Mando lost nearly everything, but his resolve only strengthened. With their common enemy identified, Fett showed Mando his chain code embedded in his armor, proving his heritage as a Mandalorian foundling. Honoring his promise, Fett pledged his service to Mando until Grogu was safely recovered. Their first step required information, leading them to Navarro, where Cara Dune, now a marshal for the New Republic, reluctantly helped them locate an imprisoned Miggs Mayfeld, the former Imperial sharpshooter Mando had worked with previously. Despite their troubled history, Mando needed Mayfeld's Imperial knowledge to locate Gideon's cruiser. Dune used her authority to temporarily release Mayfeld into her custody, and the unlikely team set course for Morak, home to a secret Imperial mining hub. Their plan was straightforward but dangerous. Infiltrate the facility to access a terminal containing the coordinates of Gideon's cruiser. Disguised as Imperial transport pilots, Mando and Mayfeld drove a shipment of highly volatile rhydonium through mountainous terrain to the refinery. The journey proved perilous when pirates attacked the convoy, hoping to destroy the Empire's fuel reserves. Mando fought them off from atop the transport, showcasing his combat skills while Mayfeld navigated the treacherous roads. Upon reaching the refinery, they faced an unexpected complication. The terminal was located in an officer's mess hall and required a facial scan for access. Mayfeld balked when he spotted his former commanding officer, Valin Hess, among the officers. With Grogu's life hanging in the balance, Mando made an unthinkable choice. He removed his helmet, exposing his face in public for the first time since childhood, breaking his sacred oath as a Mandalorian. This sacrifice allowed him to access the terminal and retrieve Gideon's coordinates. When Hess invited them for a celebratory drink, Mayfeld's barely contained hatred for his former superior boiled over. After a tense conversation about Imperial atrocities committed during Operation Cinder, Mayfeld shot Hess dead, forcing them to fight their way out of the facility. In appreciation of Mayfeld's unexpected assistance, Dune allowed him to disappear into freedom rather than returning him to prison. Armed with Gideon's location and renewed determination, Mando sent the Moff a chilling message, echoing Gideon's own words from their previous encounter on Navarro. The message was clear. Mando was coming for what was his, and nothing would stand in his way. To assault Gideon's cruiser, Mando assembled an elite strike team. Bo-Katan Kryze joined willingly, seeing an opportunity to reclaim the Darksaber, while Koska Reeves, Cara Dune, and Fennec Shand completed the formidable crew. From Dr. Pershing, captured aboard a shuttle, they learned that Gideon kept a platoon of dark troopers aboard his ship, stored near the brig where Grogu was held. Bo-Katan devised their strategy: fake a crash landing in the cruiser's launch tube, creating a distraction, while Mando used his pure Beskar armor to withstand the dark troopers and reach Grogu. The assault began with precision and courage, with the warriors carving through squads of stormtroopers as they split up to fulfill their objectives. Racing against time, Mando reached the Dark Trooper storage bay just as they were powering up. He managed to seal most of them outside the ship in the vacuum of space, but one droid escaped containment. The resulting battle showcased the terrifying power of these mechanized soldiers, as even Mando's Beskar and combat skills barely allowed him to defeat a single unit. Finally reaching Grogu's cell, Mando was confronted by Moff Gideon himself, who wielded the ancient Darksaber over the child's head. Despite claiming he had already gotten what he needed from Grogu, Gideon attacked Mando. The ensuing duel tested Mando's skill against the legendary Mandalorian weapon, but his Beskar spear proved a worthy counter. After an intense struggle, Mando defeated Gideon, taking possession of the Darksaber and rescuing Grogu at last. Upon reaching the bridge with his captive, Mando learned of a critical cultural reality he had inadvertently triggered. By defeating Gideon in combat and claiming the Darksaber, he had become the rightful heir to the throne of Mandalore. Despite his willingness to yield the blade to Bo-Katan, who desperately needed it to unite her people, Mandalorian tradition dictated the weapon must be won in battle, not given. This unexpected complication created immediate tension, as Bo-Katan's lifelong quest hung in the balance. Before they could resolve this dilemma, alarm klaxons blared throughout the ship. The Dark Troopers, having re-entered through the hull, marched inexorably toward the bridge. Even Mando's considerable skills would be no match for an entire platoon of these deadly droids. As the Dark Army hammered at the blast doors, a lone X-Wing fighter appeared on their scanners, requesting landing clearance. Through the ship's security cameras, they watched in awe as a hooded figure wielding a green lightsaber carved through the Dark Troopers with impossible skill and power. Grogu's ears perked up, sensing something through the Force as the mysterious warrior approached. When the blast doors opened, Luke Skywalker stood before them, having answered Grogu's call from Tython. The legendary Jedi offered to train Grogu, promising to protect the child with his life. Mando, recognizing this as the fulfillment of his mission from the Armorer, faced his most difficult moment yet. Grogu was reluctant to leave his protector, but Mando understood this was the child's best chance at a future. In a final act of profound love, Mando removed his helmet, allowing Grogu to see his face for only the second time. With tears in his eyes, he bid farewell to the child who had become his clan, promising they would meet again. Months later, without Grogu by his side, Mando returned to his bounty-hunting ways. Searching for his former covert, he tracked them to an industrial world where he was reunited with the Armorer and Paz Vizsla. When asked if he had removed his helmet, Mando confessed the truth. The Armorer declared him an apostate, no longer a Mandalorian by their creed. His only path to redemption would be through the living waters in the mines of Mandalore, a planet believed destroyed during the Great Purge. Despite this rejection, Mando commissioned the Armorer to forge something special from his Beskar spear, a small chainmail shirt for Grogu. This armor represented his continued devotion to the child, regardless of their separation. With no ship after the destruction of the Razor Crest, Mando traveled to Tatooine, where mechanic Peli Motto helped him build a replacement, a modified N-1 starfighter, sleek and fast, though without the living quarters his previous ship had offered. His path soon crossed with Fennec Shand once more, who requested his help on behalf of Boba Fett. Now installed as the new crime lord of Tatooine following the death of Jabba the Hutt, Fett faced war with the Pike Syndicate. Before committing fully to this conflict, Mando decided to visit Grogu at Luke Skywalker's new Jedi Academy. Upon arriving at the remote woodland planet, Mando was intercepted by Ahsoka Tano. She gently explained that seeing Mando would only make Grogu's training more difficult, as attachment was forbidden in the Jedi way. Though he could see Grogu training with Luke in the distance, Mando reluctantly accepted Tano's wisdom. He entrusted her with the Beskar chainmail he had commissioned, asking her to give it to Grogu before departing with a heavy heart. When the war between Fett and the Pikes erupted in the streets of Mos Espa, Mando fought valiantly alongside his allies. In the midst of this chaos came the most unexpected reunion. Peli Motto arrived with a special passenger, Grogu himself, now wearing the Beskar chainmail Mando had made for him. The child had made his choice, abandoning the Jedi path to return to his clan of two. The battle concluded with victory for Fett's forces, and Mando prepared to depart with Grogu securely nestled in his modified starfighter. As they soared into the stars, it was clear that both had been forever changed by their time together and apart. Mando, once a solitary bounty hunter defined solely by his creed, had become something more meaningful, a father, and Grogu, the mysterious child with ancient powers, had found belonging not in the ways of the Jedi, but in the clan he had formed with his Mandalorian protector. Their story had come full circle, from reluctant guardian and valuable asset to a true family bound by choice rather than blood. Whatever adventures awaited them among the stars, they would face them together, not as hunter and quarry, but as father and son, a clan of two. Reunited with Grogu and flying through the galaxy in his modified N1 starfighter, Mando found his path taking an unexpected turn back toward his cultural roots. No longer recognized as a true Mandalorian after removing his helmet, he faced a crisis of identity. The armorer had given him only one path to redemption. He must bathe in the living waters beneath the mines of Mandalore. Most believed this impossible. According to widespread reports, Mandalore had been poisoned during the Great Purge, its atmosphere rendered toxic and its surface uninhabitable. But Mando was never one to accept defeat without verification. With Grogu tucked safely in the cockpit beside him, he set course for the shattered world that had once been the heart of Mandalorian civilization. Before making the treacherous journey to Mandalore itself, Mando visited Kalevala, home to Bo-Katan. Since their parting after the rescue of Grogu, Bo-Katan had withdrawn from her quest, retreating to her ancestral home in defeat. Without the Darksaber, which Mando still carried, she believed her dream of reclaiming Mandalore was lost. When Mando requested her guidance to the mines, she scoffed at his mission, telling him the living waters were nothing but ancient superstition. The planet was destroyed, she insisted, and no magical ritual would restore his status among the Children of the Watch. Undeterred, Mando departed with a map to the mines. Upon reaching Mandalore, he made a surprising discovery. Contrary to popular belief, the atmosphere was breathable. The supposed toxicity had been exaggerated, perhaps deliberately, to keep people away from the ravaged world. This revelation alone was significant, suggesting Mandalore might not be as lost as many had come to believe. Mando located the entrance to the ancient mines and began his descent into the planet's depths. The journey was perilous, with crumbling infrastructure and lurking dangers. In one harrowing moment, he was captured by a cybernetically enhanced alien who collected the armor of fallen Mandalorians. Thanks to Grogu's growing Force abilities and timely intervention, Mando escaped, but not before suffering injuries that compromised his equipment. Realizing the danger, Mando sent Grogu back to the surface with a distress message. The child returned with unexpected help. Bo-Katan had received their signal and arrived to assist. Her skepticism about the mission remained, but she couldn't abandon a fellow Mandalorian in peril. Together, they ventured deeper into the mines, eventually reaching the chamber containing the living waters. The ancient site was more than just a pool. It represented the spiritual heart of Mandalorian culture, where traditions dating back thousands of years converged. For the Children of the Watch, bathing in these waters was the only way to atone for breaking their creed. With Bo-Katan watching, Mando descended the stone steps into the dark waters, submerging himself in accordance with the ancient ritual. What should have been a moment of simple redemption turned into something far more significant. The weight of his armor pulled Mando deeper than expected, dragging him down into an underwater chasm. Bo-Katan dove in after him, swimming into the darkness. What they witnessed there defied belief, a massive creature stirring in the depths, its enormous form barely visible in the murky waters. They had encountered a living mythosaur, a beast thought extinct for centuries. This discovery carried enormous implications. The mythosaur was not just any creature in Mandalorian lore. It was the most sacred symbol of their warrior heritage. Ancient Mandalorians had tamed these massive beasts, riding them into battle. Their skull emblem adorned Mandalorian armor across the generations, including the pendant Mando had given to Grogu when they first parted. A prophecy spoke of the mythosaur rising again to herald a new age for Mandalore. Bo-Katan, who had witnessed the creature with her own eyes, kept this discovery mostly to herself at first. However, the experience visibly transformed her outlook. The woman who had greeted Mando with cynicism and defeat now found renewed purpose. If the mythosaur still lived, perhaps other aspects of Mandalorian heritage could be reclaimed as well. For Mando, the ritual in the living waters marked his formal redemption in the eyes of the Children of the Watch. Yet the armorer informed him that his journey was not complete. True redemption would come only when he helped unite the scattered Mandalorian clans. This task seemed nearly impossible, given the deep ideological divisions between groups like the Children of the Watch and more progressive factions like Bo-Katan's Night Owls. These divisions reflected fundamental disagreements about what it meant to be Mandalorian. The Children of the Watch adhered to ancient traditions, never removing their helmets and following strict religious practices. Bo-Katan and her followers embraced a more modern interpretation, showing their faces and adapting their culture to changing times. Finding common ground between these perspectives would require more than diplomatic skill. It would demand a unifying threat or purpose. That threat emerged in the form of Imperial remnants still loyal to Moff Gideon. Despite his capture, Gideon's influence persisted through his followers, who continued to hunt Mandalorians and plunder their resources. Intelligence gathered by Bo-Katan suggested that Gideon's forces had established a presence on Mandalore itself, extracting Beskar from the ruins and developing new weapons to combat Mandalorian armor. Faced with this threat to their shared heritage, various Mandalorian factions began to set aside their differences. Mando found himself in an unexpected position as mediator between groups. As bearer of the Darksaber, he technically held claim to leadership, though he continued to view the weapon as a burden rather than an honor. Nevertheless, his unique experience with both traditional and progressive Mandalorian factions made him an ideal bridge between them. The efforts to unite the clans gained momentum as evidence of Imperial activities on Mandalore mounted. Bo-Katan's Night Owls conducted reconnaissance missions, while members of the Children of the Watch provided knowledge of hidden passages and ancient fortifications that had survived the Purge. What began as an uneasy alliance slowly evolved into mutual respect as warriors from different backgrounds fought side by side against common enemies. The growing coalition of Mandalorian forces eventually launched a coordinated assault against the Imperial stronghold on Mandalore. The battle showcased the distinctive fighting styles of different Mandalorian traditions. The Children of the Watch fought with religious fervor, while Bo-Katan's forces employed more modern tactics. Mando moved between groups, his unique perspective helping to coordinate their efforts. The confrontation reached its climax when Mando and Bo-Katan faced Moff Gideon himself, who had escaped New Republic custody to rejoin his forces. The Imperial officer had prepared for this encounter by developing specialized dark troopers equipped with Beskar armor components, making them resistant to traditional Mandalorian weapons. The battle tested both Mando's combat skills and his commitment to Mandalorian unity. Throughout these challenges, Grogu remained by Mando's side, his connection to the Force offering unexpected advantages in critical moments. The bond between them had evolved beyond that of guardian and ward. Recognizing this truth, Mando formalized their relationship through a Mandalorian adoption ceremony. Conducted by the armorer and witnessed by representatives from various clans, the ritual officially recognized Grogu as a member of Mando's clan, giving him the status of a Mandalorian foundling. This adoption fulfilled the promise Mando had made when he first accepted responsibility for Grogu under the Mandalorian creed. Though Grogu retained his connection to the Force, he would now be raised in the fighting corps as Mando himself had been, learning the ways of Mandalorian culture alongside his unique abilities. The ceremony symbolized not just their personal bond, but the adaptive strength of Mandalorian tradition itself, embracing a Force-sensitive child from an ancient species as one of their own. As Mandalore began its slow process of reconstruction, leadership questions remained unresolved. Bo-Katan had proven herself in battle and carried the legitimate claim of her heritage. Her first-hand experience with the mythosaur strengthened her position among those who valued ancient signs and portents. Yet the Darksaber remained with Mando, complicating traditional claims to authority. This tension reflected the broader challenge facing Mandalorian society: how to honor their traditions while adapting to new realities. For Mando and Grogu, the struggle for Mandalore represented just one chapter in their ongoing journey. They continued to traverse the galaxy, sometimes returning to Navarro, where Greef Karga welcomed them as heroes. Their adventures took them to both familiar worlds and uncharted territories, with Mando passing on his knowledge and code to his adopted son, while Grogu continued to surprise his father with his growing abilities. What began as a simple bounty hunt had transformed into an epic journey of cultural rediscovery. Through Mando, the code and creed of the Mandalorians found new expression. Through Grogu, ancient powers connected to a distant past gained new purpose. Together, they embodied the resilience of found family amid a galaxy of chaos, carrying forward a legacy forged in Beskar and Bond.